go. Streets and Scholars. FG, Alex Alonso, bringing you another banger. So what's going on with the general, man?
Oh, man, just taking it easy, man. A lot of shit in the news, man. A lot of shit going on in L.A. You know how this shit go.
Yeah, man. We're going to get to the PnB Rock situation in a minute, man, because L.A. is seeming like it's turned up, man. But, the whole country's turned up. But since we live here, it kind of hit hard. It's close to home, right?
No doubt. You know what I mean? But it hit other states, too, because some of these dudes are from other places. You know what I mean? So
definitely. And last week, we kind of talked about the Snoopy Bad Azz situation where he was trying to prove he didn't snitch. And I felt like you was on a roll, but, we were limited by time. And I felt like I kind of rushed you a little bit, cut you off.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure if there was more you had to say about that situation, man.
Well, the thing about it is, y'all know I hate rats, homie. You know what I mean? They not a favorite of mine at all. So basically, it been a week since that situation has occurred. All the information pretty much came out. Haven't heard nothing lately. You know what I mean? No rebuttals, nobody, nothing like that. But at the same time, man, I believe he was convicted. You know what I mean? And in the streets, with the paperwork, and it ain't really much to be said. But hey, the boy was fouled on that situation.
Yeah, man. I could understand your passion when it comes to rats, informants, and snitches. I grew up the same way. I might not have that level of, I don't know what the right word is, hatred maybe,
yeah.
that you have because you actually went through it,
Well, the thing about it was getting sadder and sadder to me is it seemed like people are what's the word I'm looking for, are taking snitching lightly nowadays. You know what I mean? Oh, he didn't do nothing. He just told on a couple people. You know what I mean? Or he didn't tell on me. And fuck all that. You know what I mean? Because when this shit was started back in the day, one of the golden rules was, homie, thou shalt not snitch, homie. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, man, it's like nobody cares no more. If he didn't snitch on me, you know what I mean? Nah, man, a rat is a rat. You know what I mean? And that need to be stood on. I ain't saying you got to go out there and do nothing. But at the end of the day, don't defend it. You know what I mean? Recognize what it is and call a spade a spade. You know what I mean?
Well, there's probably a lot of people defending it because they just weren't raised with those types of principles and morals. So I really can't hate on those people that don't understand that there's a segment of society that completely stands against that, because not everyone is going to believe that not helping law enforcement is the right thing, especially let's say you got a killer running through the neighborhood. Of course, everybody's gonna be like, hey, as soon as we find out who that is, let's call it in, right?
Right. No doubt, you got that point, but then at the end, your mother grew up telling you, stop being a tattletale. You know what I mean? Stop coming here and telling on your brothers and sisters. These are the same people that turn into whistleblowers at the job. You know what I mean? When somebody tell on you at the job for something you did or didn't do, you don't like that shit. You know what I mean? So they want to pick and choose, which everybody do. You want to pick and choose which situation is tell-onable or not. But I'm talking about the street shit. You know what I mean? I understand that society is bred to, protect the community. And if a killer is out there, hey, let's call the law enforcement. I'm talking about these gangsters, man. You know what I mean? These dudes out here talking about their gangsters, talking about their riders, you know what I mean? And then next thing you know, they got paperwork behind their name, you know what I mean? I'm going to call that shit out every time. I be trying to go light, trying to be humble, try to bring a sense of awareness to the situation without, going in on motherfuckers. But at the end of the day, Alex, you know what I mean? I'm finna start going in on a lot of these hot niggas, man, because, you know what I mean? These gangsters, you know what I mean? This shit ain't cool out here. They making it seem like it's just okay to do that.
Hey, when you said whistleblower, it made me think about a story that my wife just told me like yesterday at her job. Mm-hmm. She said that one of her coworkers got promoted, and now that person is acting like they're in more control. Mm-hmm. And someone was taking longer lunches than usual, which was something they always done.
Right.
But now someone is telling this new supervisor that such and such is taking longer lunches, and guess what? A whole bunch of women are pissed.
Right.
Because someone told my wife said that we have a mole. There's a mole among us that's ratting us out on, I guess, taking a little bit longer lunches. And even though this is a trivial thing, right? Lunches and a whole bunch of women in the workplace, hey, there's a whole bunch of women that my wife work with that are pissed right now.
No doubt.
Isn't that crazy?
No doubt.
It's the same shit, right?
It's the same shit, man. You know what I mean? But out here in these streets, out here with this gangster shit. Now, on the flip side, with Snoopy Bad Azz, if he was an R&B singer and he was singing about making love records and shit like that, then I would get why certain people might not care. You know what I mean? But you can't come out here and represent this gangster shit with paperwork behind your name. That's just what it is. You know what I mean? And I'm getting to the point to where, ain't no protecting him. You know what I mean? So like I say, I that's just what it is, homie. You know what I mean? So
yeah, well, I think he's taken a step away from his position as a gang member within the Hollywood Pyrus. In fact, I think he even said he don't mess with the Pyrus anymore, or did he even denounce the P?
Back in a time back, he denounced the P. You know what I mean? That's where the only issue I ever had with Snoopy Bad Azz. Never had a problem with him. Listen to a few of his songs. Never. You had a problem with him. But you denounced the P. That's your prerogative. I still wasn't mad at you because of that. You know what I mean? But at the same time, you tried to backslide and come back to the P. You know what I mean? And when you did that, homie, like, hold on, ain't no flip-flopping in this game. So even though that was something that was internal with the rules, it wasn't nothing detrimental that, I'm going to be on his helmet because he denounced the P. You know what I mean? But, homie, when that word came out, dude, it's a rap, homie. You know what I mean? So, that's what it is on mine.
Yeah, I liked Snoopy Bad Azz too, for the simple fact that he didn't run from any of his fades. He took it like a man. He showed up when a whole lot of people wouldn't have showed up. So he kind of scored a lot of points with me on that. But all of that goes away when you actually are in this street life, you in this gangster life, and you're providing information to law enforcement.
No doubt. You know what I mean? So where's your credibility in your songs that you rap? And even though we know everybody don't do everything that they do in their rap songs, you know what I mean? But at the same time, homie, it's like you get 0 listens, you know what I mean, coming from a dude like you. 0 listens, So now I'm wondering if the dude even is worth putting the money behind, you know what I mean, to produce his records, to produce his albums, you know what I mean? I still believe there's some people out there that won't care, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, man, it's a whole lot of them that will. I think it's going to hinder his program.
Now, do you remember when the rapper Rick Ross, it was revealed that he was actually a CO, corrections officer? For some of us, that's the police.
Right.
And at the time, he was doing these smash hits about drug dealing and pushing weight and all this stuff. And for a moment, I thought that, his career is over. It's a wrap. All these street cats that made him a star, they're not going to rock with him. But what I didn't realize is that there's a whole lot of white suburban, there's a whole lot of women who don't care about that stuff that will still rock with Rick Ross. But what were your thoughts when you first heard that the rapper Rick Ross, we're not talking about the real drug dealer, right, but the rapper from Florida, it turned out this dude was a CEO working on a prison system?
Well, sometimes I look at things 2 ways, Alex. Sometimes I look at things, a correctional officer, sometimes that's just a job. You're not really doing a lot of investigations. You're not putting people behind bars. Certain things you're not doing that regular officers do. And don't get me wrong, if you are a police and you doing your job, that's your job as well. So I kind of look at things different as far as that's concerned. Not to mention when Rick Ross started rapping, he was rapping about selling drugs and and stuff like that. But he wasn't rapping about shooting dudes in the street. I'm from such and such crib or such and such Paru. This my hood. I'm such and such in my hood. He didn't come like that. He just made good music and people felt it. And he could rap over some nice beats that he had. So I kind of looked at him different. I mean, don't get me wrong. He never had street cred with me. He was a rapper. He was always a rapper. And there's some rappers out there that I don't look at as street dudes, but I like their music. You know what I mean? And he came with the drug stuff, but he didn't come with the street shit, the hood shit. I'm gonna gun you down. So I think that's how Rick Ross slid through.
Okay, yeah, I guess so. I guess you got a point there. I just always you're right about the CO thing is just a job, but most COs aren't going to be doing gangster rap. I kind of consider what he did gangster rap. Maybe he
it was gangster rap, but he wasn't talking about. I ain't never heard him say he shot. I was out there shooting. Selling the drug part. Okay, yeah, he might have fabricated. Some of that, but I never heard him say, I was gunning niggas down and you know what I mean. I jumped out the thing with the Tech 9. I don't ever hear none of that from him, But I also didn't listen to his music at first because he was, like you say, he had the CO ties. But when I did hear some of his music, he had some hits. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he was putting out bangers since the year he debuted, I think '06. But what was really interesting about that situation was that when the CO photo came out and he was asked about it, he denied that it was him in the photo in the beginning.
That was the part where he messed up at. You know what I mean? And then he tried to double back. He end up coming with could have been a lie too, but if he would have just said, listen, man, I took a job. I had a clean record. I took a job. You know what I mean? Because it really is people out there that just take jobs, especially in that CO field. You know what I mean? They come out the military, they can't, or come out of certain places, don't have a record, looking for somewhere to do. They like, we'll hire you. And they go do the shit at the prison system. You know what I mean? And they really go do their job. Because I done seen plenty COs come put their 8 hours in, don't give a damn about what you doing in here. Long as ain't nobody dead on my watch, I'm out of here. Y'all could tattoo, drink, do whatever you gonna do. You know what I mean? So I have seen plenty of COs that just come do their job and go home. Not trying to write you up, not trying to search your cell, not trying to do a whole bunch of stuff. They just coming to get their check, man, and go home. Long as ain't nobody getting hurt, where they got to write reports and shit, man, they gonna let you do what you want to do, man. So it's like I said, that's why I said I don't take that CO thing, like if he was a cop or something, you know what I mean? That's why I say that.
Okay. Well, definitely some COs do be investigating.
Yeah, no doubt.
In the CDC, they got a whole, the IGI, I think, the gang, they got a whole gang task force within the CDC just for that gang shit. But yeah, man, what's his name? Rick Ross, the rapper Rick Ross, he made a hell of a comeback, and I don't think anyone even talks about it today. And then he beat up or had beat up Vlad from Vlad TV, because apparently Vlad was the one who broke that story. And when he saw him, he beat him up, and then Vlad sued him and got a little bit of a couple $100,000 from him. But his response to it in terms of denying it lets you know that he didn't want to admit to it because of the street representation in his music. This didn't vibe with, oh, I'm a CO also.
No, I agree with you 100%. But like I say, I wasn't a Rick Ross fan, didn't buy his music, but eventually I did go on to hear some music about him that was tight. And to be honest with you, it could go for the same with this dude Snoopy Bad Azz. He can go on to make some hits, Alex, you know what I mean, that you may just be like, damn, that rap motherfucker can rap. You know what I mean? But that's what it's gonna always be. You know what I mean? Rick Ross ain't gonna never stop being in my mono. He was a CO, man. That dude ain't no street motherfucker. You know what I mean? But that song is bumping, So that's just how I'm gonna label him though.
I'm certainly interested in what Damian Doster, the guy that Snoopy Bad Azz testified against, where he claims he was testifying for him as a favor. I would be curious to know what Damian Doster has to say.
View, huh?
Yeah, he's sitting in the penitentiary, and nobody's heard his story or his perspective. But according to Snoopy Bad Azz, he was just doing him a favor after he bumped into him, going to court in jail at some point, which I think is bizarre that you would do a favor for the op or for the rival. But Orlando Anderson did a favor for Suge Knight. I guess they paid him. He came to court, testified when Suge Knight got violated for kicking him in the hotel casino in Vegas. Orlando Anderson came to court and said, "Oh no, Suge didn't kick me. He was trying to help me,
right? Because
Suge know he was about to get a violation." And so what's his name? Baby Lane, Orlando Anderson actually came to court, who's a Crip from Southside,
right,
and testified on behalf of Ahmaud Pyru.
Right, but that was some gangster shit just based on because he was the victim.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So he came to court and said, nah, they didn't do that to me.
Exactly.
That was some gangster shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, but if he would have came to court and talked about somebody else or testified for somebody else, that, it could have been looked at a little different. You know what I mean? But I do remember that situation.
Well, won't Snoopy Bad Azz say the same thing? That he testified and said, nah, he didn't point the gun at me. Nah, he didn't try to kill me. he killed the other dude, but he didn't do nothing to me. That's what Snoopy Bad Azz's defense is.
Yeah, but you also said he did something to somebody else too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not to mention, you know, you made statements before it even got to trial. You know what I mean? You admitted that the people family said to go back down, you gotta go say something. And you went back there and said something. And then people didn't just let you say something, they interrogated you. You know what I mean? And when you said that, you know, you was running from him, you know, because that's what he said. I was even running from him. Why was you running from him if you ain't said nothing? You know what I mean? You was running from him because you didn't want to remake them statements. You know what I mean? You thought about what you said and said, I thought I shouldn't have said shit. Now you running because you don't want to have to go back and say these statements again. You know what I mean? So, different situation.
Now, I wonder if Snoopy Bad Azz was given any incentive from Damian Doster to testify, like the way Orlando. I think they paid Orlando $50,000 to say that Suge didn't do anything. Or did Snoopy Bad Azz just do this out of the kindness of his heart to go testify on behalf of a dude that killed his homeboy?
Hey, man, it sounded like he just did that shit like, oh, it was an accident? Oh, shit, I'll help you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But, you know, like I said, I wasn't there. I don't know. But I do know that he did go get up on that stand, you know, and he did, you know, repeat some things that happened in those events. So, you know.
Well, on the topic of ratting, informing, and testifying, Reggie Wright, he was on Bomb First.
Yeah, no doubt, man. And it was funny how I just happened to tap in with him because I follow all the, you know, the local YouTubers. You know what I mean? All the black dudes is trying to, you know, and others, you know what I mean? But all the gangsters and, you know, homies and stuff like that, they got a YouTube page. I'm going to go in there and listen, you know what I mean? So I know Reggie Wright sometimes be having some interesting conversations. So I tapped in, you know, for a second. And that 20 seconds that I tapped in, man, it was interesting.
That's crazy because right when you tapped in, I guess someone in the comments while Reggie Wright Jr. was doing a live on Bomb First asked a question regarding the FG and Mob James situation, right?
Right, no doubt. Asked him something to the fact that was Mob James a rat, or how did he feel about Mob James being a rat, or something like that, you know. And he you know, I could tell he was uncomfortable answering the question, but he went on and answered it.
Okay, let me see if we can play a clip from that because let's
now what you want me to ask? Y'all know my opinion on that. Who gives a fuck? I don't know. He never snitched nothing to me. But if that happened, that's him and FG beef. Let FG take it on. FG ain't never said nothing, did nothing to that man. So that's who sounds like the bitch to me. Whoa, go tell him that. Go tell FG that. No, FG a cool dude. So I don't mean to disrespect him like that. Because FG is solid. But that's their beef.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, so man, Reggie went in, but then he immediately backpedaled, didn't he?
No doubt, you know what I mean? But he said that shit, you know what I mean? You know, and I was right there. I could have just easily typed some shit. You know, actually I was driving, you know what I mean? 9,000 gallons of gas, so it wouldn't have been, you know, cool to just start typing in. But at the same time, man, I was kind of disappointed in Reggie. I was disappointed in Reggie for a couple things, you know what I mean? For one, well, first off, me and Reggie are not friends. You know, we're not enemies, but we're not friends. We don't have no history together. We don't have no, you know, shit like that. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, homie, you know what I mean? Don't ever disrespect me out my name because your homeboy's a rat. And then like you sit there and say, you know, Mob James ain't never snitched nothing to me. Nigga, you been knowing Mob James been a rat for years. Just like Reggie, you know a whole lot of niggas is a rats. You know what I mean? Come on, homie. Let's keep it 100. And the reason you do vouch for me and shit, because the rats told you I was solid. You know what I mean? You know, you got dudes under your belt, homie, that let you get out there, you know, call them out their name and they scared to say something because you got shit on them. You ain't got nothing on me, homie. You know what I mean? I've been 100. I've been authentic. You know what I mean? Now, don't get me wrong, homie. I understand what you're saying about doing something to a person, but I don't get out here on these YouTube streets and even discuss that topic, you know, because that's a delicate situation when you get to talking about doing shit to people. You know what I mean? But on the flip side, just say if something was to happen to this dude today, he got busted upside his head today. You know what I mean? Reggie, off some energy that Reggie said, it's that easy for shit to happen in the streets when you opening your mouth. You know what I mean? So I mean, I know Reggie, you know, he do a lot of interviews. He say a lot of things. He got a lot of information and shit just comes out. But at the same time, homie, we still got to be mindful of the shit we say because shit still could be sparked up based on what the fuck you saying. You know what I mean? You know, so, but like I said, at the end of the motherfucking day, homie, I've been solid. I've been 100, you know, and you came back and said, you know what you said, you know, FG solid, you know, but at the same time, homie, you already know, homie, ain't no bitches over here.
Yeah, I'm calling another man a bitch is, especially if you do it in their face, is a whole nother, you know, that's a whole nother offense.
Well, no, let's be clear. You know what I mean? It ain't no doubt about it. You know what I mean? I know Reggie not in the best of health right now. You know what I mean? You know, I know he trying to work his way back to full strength. You know what I mean? I know his situation, you know. If it wasn't for that situation, you know what I mean? Because I've never been called that before. You know what I mean? Without running over. Oh, I ain't never been called it before. But that's definitely run a fade material. You know what I mean? But like I said, I know Reggie, the situation is in. He trying to get better. You know what I mean? I wish him the best on getting back his health because I don't want to see no man down and out. You know what I mean? And but at the same time, if he was at full health and shit like that, I would be saying, hey, Reggie, pull up. You know what I mean? Let's get this out the way, homie. Out of respect, you know, let's just run this and get this out the way. But at the same time, like I say, I'm gonna go and let it, you know. But I'm acknowledge what you said, nigga. You know what I mean? But you know, it's a whole lot of niggas can't say, you know, they solid like me over there on that east side. Reggie know who the rats is over there. He know I'm motherfucking well. I'm good, you know.
Now I'm a little surprised that Reggie actually, you know, used that type of language with you when talking about you, saying did he say you was a bitch or it was a bitch move?
The word bitch was used. Yeah. That was enough for me. You know what I mean?
Okay, and this comes from a guy that we had him on the Streets and Scholars, one of our early episodes, and we were talking about the 2000 Death Row album compilation. At the end of that interview, he was just like, "Hey, hold up, Alex. You've been going in on Mob James a little too hard. Can we agree to stop talking about it?" Actually, we actually had a private conversation where he said, "Hey, can we stop talking about it?" I was like, "Sure, you know, we can stop talking about it. I got no problem with that." So it's surprising that not only is he talking about it, but he's using that type of language. He knows what the truth is.
No doubt.
So
Ben knew what the truth is.
So it's very misleading what Reggie is doing, this position that he's taking. First, you say you didn't want to talk about it anymore. You talking about it, Reggie Wright Jr., and then you calling my man FG a bitch? Oh man, that's just that you crossed the line, Reggie. You really did.
No motherfucking doubt. You know what I mean? And like I say, man, you know,
a man that had to walk off 120 months, you calling a bitch?
Yeah, for your homeboy. You know what I mean? You know, for your partner, your friend. But at the same time, like I say, man, Reggie at times get to talking reckless. You know what I mean? And like I say, you know, I wish him all the best to get back healthy, man. You know what I mean? You know, and but Reggie know what it is. Reggie know what it is.
Hey, look, when we were doing the Gangster Chronicles, I would say somewhere around episode 11, 12, 13, Reggie decides to bring in some paperwork because he wants to expose some snitches. Mm-hmm. And he brings his paperwork on the episode, and he exposes Snoop Dogg and Daz Dillinger as being snitches, I guess, after a shooting happened at a studio, Can-Am Studios. Mm-hmm. And then they ran to the police, but they ended up getting arrested because they had like weed.
I remember
ounces of weed on them. But his energy was like, Snoop and Daz are snitches, and here is the police report. He had it, 1997, LAPD, I believe it was LAPD, or it might have been Glendale, but it was a police report that said that Snoop and Daz ran to the police.
Well, you know, this is what I'm going to state. I'm going to state that I believe Reggie Wright Jr. has police reports and information on a whole lot of dudes, Alex. You know what I mean? That's how he get away with talking the shit he talk, you know, walking, you know, doing the shit he say. I believe, homie, he got a lot of inside information on a lot of dudes. You know what I mean? And he basically saying, if you shut the fuck up or I'm going to pull this paperwork out. And I think that's why a lot of dudes ain't saying shit to him. You know what I mean? Me, I'm not in that situation with him. He can go to every motherfucking police department in America and he ain't gonna find nothing on me. You know what I mean? But I think he's kind of punking these dudes out here because a lot of these dudes might be faulty. You know, but Reggie, if you gonna pull that paperwork out, homie, you showed and pull the paperwork out on you on your partner Mob James. You showed and pulled the paperwork out on a few other dudes over there in your hood. You know what I mean? That you got paperwork on. Pull all that shit out then. You know what I mean? It ain't hard to find. You know what I mean? I know you know who good and who not. You know.
Well, he certainly had a different level of energy when he wanted to talk about Snoop Dogg and Daz being snitches, but I don't think he's ever going to have that type of energy when it comes to Mob James.
Man, he need to just come out and just say what it is. You know what I mean? Yeah, the dude told straight up, that's my partner. You know what I mean? I respect that. That's my partner. He told, that's my partner. Just say what it is, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you know what's even crazy? I went back and listened to some of the episodes of the Gangster Chronicles when it was myself, Reggie Wright Jr., and Mob James. We had like 2 or 3 episodes where we talked about Tekashi 6ix9ine being a snitch, and Mob James was weighing in on it. And see, at this time, of course, let me let the people know, I had no idea of the role that Mob James had played in the early 2000s as an FBI informant. So to go back and listen to these episodes, it's quite comical.
No, gotta be. I know you gotta sit back one day and like, damn, ain't this about something? You know what I mean? And I'm sure even on the inside, Reggie was laughing. You know, the Reggie was like, this rap motherfucker sitting up here, you know. But he was playing the song, doing the song and dance that Reggie wanted him to do. You know, wanted him to bring the information to the because he did have these stories. He did have real life situations. But at the same time, your credibility is everything. And I don't know why these dudes keep thinking that they not going to get exposed and shit. And I've been letting up off motherfuckers. I've been trying to go on about my little humble business and do my shit. But they going to make me start pulling out motherfucking, you know, going back and doing my homework and doing, you know what I mean, and set motherfuckers out. You know what I mean? And that's how it is, you know, because like I say, if since Reggie, you know, feel like, you know, his homeboy ain't did nothing and he didn't know. I mean, like I say, Mob James a little too old right now, but I definitely tell Reggie, go tell your homeboy to come run this fade for you because, like I said, I know you're trying to get better, you know, but I was kind of heated that I was disrespected like that, homie, by Reggie Wright Jr. And he know I'm one of the few solid motherfuckers around. They never said shit about him personally, you know what I mean, behind his back or in his face, you know what I mean? And, you know, like I say, though, he did come back and say, I ain't going to disrespect the dude like that, but you already disrespected me. You know what I mean? You know, so come on, man.
So it was kind of like a quick apology after the disrespect, right?
Yeah, but you know the disrespect was said. You know what I mean? And that's the thing about it. You know, and like I say, I believe he just realized what he said. Like, you know, hold on, man, I ain't got to go there with him. Maybe he was in his feelings because people keep getting on him about his friend. You know what I mean? If I had a rat friend that I was hanging out with, and I would feel some kind of way too because I would be, you know, ashamed of myself to even be hanging with this dude. But, you know, at the same time, Reggie gonna ride with him. That's his buddy. You know what I mean? But that's what it is over there.
But I think Reggie Wright Jr. being a former police officer and a father, a high-ranking retired member of the Compton PD/Sheriff Department, should have no problem socializing with rats and informants because that's what police do, right?
Right. So that's why it seemed like you wouldn't have no problem just saying, yeah, he told, but you know, hey, that's my guy, that's my homie.
And you know here's the reality when it comes to informants and rats that provide information to the police. When those police officers are in their lockers, in their private spaces, they're clowning those rats, informants and snitches too, as like the lowest scum of the earth as well as police officers.
Well, no doubt, but you know, you got to understand that Reggie was enthralled in the Mob Pyru gang because he grew up there. You know what I mean? So I'm sure it was dudes that was talking to him like he wasn't a cop because they knew him long before he was a cop. So probably when Reggie needed information from not just over there, from anywhere on the east side, he probably had dudes that he could just pull up on and they'd give him some information. You know what I mean? Not thinking that they telling, just thinking they, you know, talking to Reggie and they giving up, you know, saying something. You know what I mean? So Reggie probably was privy to a whole lot of inside information about the hoods over there, whether it was, you know, over there in Southside or whether it was over there in the mob, because I know he patrolled Southside a lot. You know, he probably had informants everywhere that was slipping him information, you know, so he's definitely not a stranger to informants. But like you say, they probably get to the station and be, oh, I got that rat motherfucker to tell. You know what I mean? You know.
Also, his father, who had a longer career in law enforcement, probably has way more information on the people who've been telling those joint task force that they do with the FBI. You know,
Yeah.
because the FBI just don't come in there by themselves.
Nah, they go get the local law enforcement and they aid them and all that shit. So they privy to a lot of information, you know. So, but I never hear Reggie Wright Sr. You know, I hear him get up there and he talked about the G homies doing certain things and when he had to arrest certain G homies and or Crips or something like that. But I never hear him say such OG such and such or this person like that or this person like that. Was giving me inside information. I think he might keep it to himself, but I'm almost 100 that he knows a whole lot.
Yeah, I think there's also practical reasons why we need to be careful about snitches and informants because, okay, I understand that the general society wants crime solved. Great. But if you have a kid or you have a family member who's young and they witness a crime, you might not necessarily want them to tell because you don't know the dangers and the risk that you're exposing your loved one to, a son or a daughter or a niece or nephew, because you don't know how many people are watching and are figuring out, wow, this person is the one that's going to tell. Because now you just expose that person to a whole lot of dangers and the police are not going to be there to protect that person.
No doubt, but for me, sometimes I flip it around and say, when you see a crime like that or you see somebody hurt somebody else, you don't know why this person is getting hurt. You don't know what this other person did that you definitely wouldn't approve of if you knew, you know what I mean, why he's getting his ass whipped, why he got shot 7 times. You don't know what that person done. You know what I mean? So some people be so quick to tell, but you don't know, man, that this person did some horrible things and they're paying for it, you know, in the back end. You know what I mean? So that's how sometimes when I look at sometimes brutal situations, I'll be like, well, that first thing I say, damn, what did he do? Because a lot of times people just don't walk up to people, just random people on the street. We've been walking around for years. You know, regular people been walking around for years, not getting shot, not getting stabbed. You know what I mean? So sometimes when I see somebody do something brutal to somebody, I'll be like, damn, what that dude do? That's how I look at it. So that's why I be not quick to, you know, recommend somebody go just jump up there and start you don't know what this other person done.
Yeah, you don't know what the motivation behind a crime is, whether you are support the crime or don't support the crime. Crime happens for a reason, and this has been going on ever since Cain and Abel, the first sons of the first created couple, if you believe in the scriptures, because the story goes, Cain killed Abel, killed his own brother, and we've been having crime ever since. Crime is not going away, and there's usually sometimes positive reasons why crime happened. For example, when the Night Stalker was running the streets of LA, killing like 14, 15 people, it was the dudes in the streets that caught him over there in East LA and touched him up. Nobody was complaining about that.
No, none whatsoever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, but then there's, you know, I had a situation where the LAPD came to my door. This was about 5 years ago. They came to my door and they said, are you Alex? I said, yeah. I looked on their clipboard. They had a big ass 8x10 of my driver's license picture. So I'm like, yeah. They said, yeah, we've been looking for you, and we need you to come down to the police station to answer some questions. I said, well, if I'm not under arrest, I'm not leaving my house.
Right.
And they said, well, we got information that you may be involved in the kidnapping of 2 kids, Amber Alert. I said, well, I got nothing to do with it. Right. So if you don't mind, I'm about to close this door and you're going to have a good day. These 2 officers tried to shame me by saying that, you know, there's 2 kids out there and you could probably save their lives. And I said, look, you guys came in here accusing me. And
right.
At this point, I got to protect myself. And, you know, whatever these 2 kids are going through, I pray for them. But right now, the priority is me and my family. And I had my 2 sons with me. They were like young. They were like maybe, let's say this was about 5 years ago. So they were like 13 and 12 maybe. And they came next to me while I'm at the door, and he picks up the phone. The cop does. He picks up his cell phone. He makes a call and he says, look, we got the suspect. We have the suspect right here, but he doesn't want to cooperate. And I'm like, wow, I'm a suspect.
Right.
I'm just like kidnapping. Like, I'm trying to figure out how this is all coming about. I'm like, I don't do nothing wrong. So then I'm realizing, you know, I need to get a lawyer.
Yeah.
Cops automatically start thinking I'm guilty because I don't want to participate in this at all. And I think that's a part of what people don't understand is that you have a right. And just because you exercise a right doesn't mean you're guilty. So what ended up happening when my two sons came up and the cops were saying these names of these two kids apparently that I kidnapped, one of my sons said, "Oh, I know those kids." And I was like, "Where you know these kids from?" And apparently they went to camp with them. And the last text that these two kids sent was to my kids' phones. All my kids' phones were in my name. So they think that these two kids that got kidnapped, their last communication was with me, but it was with my kids. But I refused to cooperate with this kidnapping because I felt like I was looked at as a suspect.
No doubt.
And I actually recommend if the law enforcement is making you look like or feel like a suspect, don't cooperate.
No doubt. Some people don't think they had a right to say, and they used to tell you in the Miranda, you got the right to remain silent. I don't know why people didn't listen to that part. Maybe they so, worried about these cuffs going on or whatever. They just seem like they never hear that part. You got the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be held against you in a court of law. What part didn't you hear? And then they turn right around and ask them something and they answer. Bro, you just said I got the right to remain silent. Or the police would get mad if you be like, "Nah, bro, I don't have nothing to say." You know what I mean? They get very frustrated. What do you mean? You don't have anything to say? I'm asking you a question. You can keep on asking, man. I don't got nothing to say. But some people are so scared that they don't know that they don't have to say anything. Say when they ask you, where were you at yesterday at 2 p.m.? You don't got to answer that. You know what I mean? You just don't have to. Because once you answer one question, you put yourself in a situation.
And I don't recommend trying to out question or out answer the LAPD or any law enforcement agency because all you're going to do is dig yourself a hole. So I remember when the police were at my door and they kept on saying, "Can you come to the station? Can you answer some questions?" I put my hands out. I said, "The only way I'm going to the station is if you cuff me." And my two sons that were young, they started to get a little scared.
Yeah.
So, even the way they were at my door intimidated my two sons because they were thinking like, "Damn, Dad is about to go to jail." But yeah, man, the minute you feel like a suspect, stop answering questions.
No doubt.
Yeah. So, there's multiple reasons why this whole issue of telling and cooperating and snitching can be frowned upon. And I don't understand why so many people, as you were saying earlier, seem to just want to give a pass to all of these people that they're supposed to be from the streets, but they're doing non-street activity.
No doubt, but I do want to reiterate, Alex, that, if you're a regular law-abiding citizen, you know what I mean, that's not out here in these streets and not out here committing crimes or fraud or none of these type of things, you know what I mean, and something happens to you. And I don't frown upon them people calling the police, you know what I mean? They supposed to be there to protect you and serve. I don't know if they even do that anymore, but that's what they're supposed to be there for. So, the regular Joe Blow who calls the police and report a crime or report a situation, you know what I mean? I just don't... that happens every day. That's supposed to be a regular day in America, for you to call and, but we talking about these dudes out here in these streets. Like I say, I go back to that because I don't want to have nobody think that I just think grandma and everybody should not be telling. That's not the case, But
Yeah.
for these dudes that's out here in the streets, these dudes that call themselves street dudes and going by the street code, you know what I mean? Y'all telling, and then y'all want to act like y'all didn't tell. You want to keep on lying. You want to keep on talk about, my name ain't on the paper. Man, you're a rat, man. You know what I mean? Knock it off. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, definitely, man. I can't think of too many scenarios where I would actually call the police for their assistance or their help. I mean, I guess someone would have to be stabbing my wife, but at that point, I'm going to be trying to stop that person myself. What is calling the police? How is that going to help?
Right. Especially because that take time from you trying to, want that one more stab could end somebody. But at the same time, nowadays is reason. Nowadays, if when you get your car stole, now you have to go down to they don't even come out no more. They used to come out, you get your car stole, they come out, give a little report. Now you have to go to the police station because you have to get the report in order to get the car out the impound and all those sort of things, So it's reasons that you're going to deal with police officers, you know what I mean? In the neighborhood I live in, the police came down the street, it was a few months ago, asked had we seen some kids dressed like this was the funny part. I was out there with my 2 daughters, you know, and they grew up in the suburbs most of their life, all their life. And police came by and said, "Hey, did you guys see 3 kids walking? One had a blue jacket on, one had a this or that." And before I could even answer, my daughters were like, "Nope," you know. And I was like, "Nah, bro, we ain't see him, you know." And so the police pulled off and stuff like that. And then I was talking to my daughters. I was like, "Man, y'all answer fast." And they was like, "Oh yeah, that was Myra and them. They went that way, but I'm not finna get involved with that." They just know that it ain't my business. You know, they knew it wasn't a detrimental situation. They wasn't looking for them. Actually, they were some foster kids who had didn't report back home in time. But my kids was like, "Shit, I'm not getting involved in that." They knew that I'm not finna get involved in no situation where it's not a detrimental situation. Nobody's getting hurt. It's not my business. I don't, it's not my business. So why involve myself in somebody else's business that has nothing to do with me? And they know that right now. Yeah. Hey, that's LA, man. Shit. That's authentic LA right there.
There you go. But hey, the last time I actually called the police was when my car was stolen. My old ass Cadillac Escalade was stolen from the airport last summer for the catalytic converter. They cut that catalytic converter out.
Man, let me tell you something real fast. It's big right now. Let me just tell you something. We was at Moore Furniture just 2 days ago. And we walked into Moore's Furniture, and my wife wanted me, "Come look at this bedroom set." I don't want to look at no bedroom set. You know what I mean? But I went in there with her. Alex, I bullshit you not. People they would park a few cars down, walk back outside, walk back in and say, "Man, somebody stole our catalytic converter. Could you guys run the cameras back?" They stole they shit while they was in the store, man. In my neighborhood, that shit is going around big. I parked my truck and shit in the back, but that's big business right there. But I didn't know you had been a victim of that.
Yeah, man. I guess there's precious metals in the catalytic converter.
I'm just finding this out because they seem like they running around doing it heavy now.
Yeah, when you said you got to call the police when your car's stolen, it just made me realize, I actually did call the LAPD. Got my car stolen. But they recovered it a couple days later. But I remember my homeboy got jacked. He got jacked for his shit by the homies. And he reported his car stolen, and the homies that took his car, they said he snitched. But it was like, what do you expect? He just said his car was stolen.
Right.
He
didn't say a whole motherfucker took it and shit. Yeah.
He just reported his car stolen, and then it was a mess. But I gave him a pass on that because that's what you're supposed to do when your car gets stolen. But hey, let's talk about this last topic, man. Some people look at Los Angeles through TV, the movies. They look at the sunshine, the palm trees, and they always think this probably the most paradise city in America, Los Angeles. Maybe Miami gets that as well. Mm-hmm. But people forget that there's gangsters here.
Damn.
There's crime here. There's gangs here. There's poverty. There's low income. And unfortunately, PnB Rock decided to visit Los Angeles from Philadelphia. And he decided, of all the Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles that he can go to, he could have went to the one in Inglewood on Manchester.
Went to anyone.
He could have went to the one in Long Beach. He could have went to the one that I would have recommended him to go to, the one in Hollywood on Gower. Yeah. But he decided to go to the one on the east side of Los Angeles.
He went to the one I've never been to. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've never ate in that one. I've driven by there about 1 million times, but I ain't never stopped there. But he went to that one, and I respect Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles Company. I actually interviewed the owner years ago. His name is Herb Hudson. But that's the Roscoe's to avoid.
No doubt, but let's be clear. Although LA is a beautiful thing, Alex, we could throw a rock and hit the beach, man. From where we are, we can drive an hour and a half or two and be up, come February up in the snow. We got Big Bear up there. You have miles and miles of beaches from San Diego to the Bay, But when it comes to LA, do people forget that every Crip, every Blood, every Paru in America, this is the motherland. It started right here, Alex. And it's a lot of people tend to forget that, you know, they used to respect, oh, that's LA, man. That's LA, man. Don't go to LA. They gonna jack you. They gonna rob you. They used to have that respect. Other states got to doing similar things, same shit, basically gang banging, robbing, stealing, and killing. And people started to feel like, well, LA ain't no different than nowhere. LA is different from everywhere else. You know what I mean? And people need to stop sleeping on that. Unfortunately, this young man lost his life, you know, behind some jury, you know. But I have to, you know, yes, it's a shame that somebody went in there and tried to rob him for something that wasn't theirs, you know. Not for one thing though, hey man, that's the streets. But for two, when do you take accountability for your own life? I try to teach my son that you got to keep yourself alive. You know what I mean? It's your job to keep you alive.
Preach, man.
No, I'm just saying, Alex, because I mean, it just look, man. It's certain places I go and don't go for a reason. You know, I don't have enemies everywhere. I really don't have a bunch of enemies at this point. I can't just go anywhere though and be comfortable. And then, you know, when people get to frowning upon when you got dudes saying, look, check in with somebody, bring you some security. Oh, well, what I'm going to check in for? Who do y'all think y'all is? You know, why should I do that? Bro, I check in when I go to L.A. If I go to the west side of L.A., to my crib homies hood, I'm going to call one of them. Hey, homie, y'all around? What y'all got doing, man? I'm going to hit this shoe store up. What you got popping? Everything good over here in the hood? They going to say, no, we beefing with the whoop-de-woops right now. They ain't all good. I'm going to do my homework before I even go to another man's hood, because when the enemies come to get them, they don't know if you from over there or not. So it ain't about just checking in like you a punk or, you know, you getting extorted or nothing like that. It's just what it is, man, in order to protect yourself.
No doubt, because every neighborhood could have unpredictable things that occur on a day-by-day basis. So just showing up, just popping up, just rolling through could be to your detriment without calling in or checking in on finding out what's going on. But, you know, there was another issue related to the PnB Rock situation, is that his girl posted the location that they were at, posted a picture of the food that they was eating, and some hungry wolves was watching.
No doubt. I'm also hearing that. I believe he posted a little something too. Maybe he went live for a second, you know, and somebody made a call exactly where he was at, you know. Regardless, you know, in a sense of social media, Alex, social media is so bad that you got people, man, that's sitting back like a job, sitting back checking people's lives and they postings and seeing where certain people at, even with the ops, even with dudes that's not, you know, don't have any money. You know what I mean? They waiting for a dude to shot their brother to be slipping somewhere and post a location that he had, you know, this certain spot, and they going to get him. They moving that fast. You know what I mean? You know, so like I say, man, I really believe that he didn't take every precaution to keep himself alive as he should have, man. And like I say, it's tragic that the young man lost his life, man.
Let me play a clip, because this is not the first time that PnB Rock had a problem in LA. He actually spoke about it in an interview he did with DJ Academics. Listen to this real quick.
The crazy thing about that situation, by the way, like you said, you've lived in LA. Yeah. Like LA's always felt little spooky to me.
This is just a couple weeks ago, a few weeks ago.
Tell me if it's just me being pussy, but like just LA. I think because LA is synonymous with the death of Biggie, death of Pac, and I think it's just so much where like niggas might be like ganged up other places, but I've never seen gang culture over there. It's just so
serious.
Crazy.
I ain't gonna lie. I went through some shit when I first like was having in LA.
That's PnB.
Niggas from Grape Street. These my niggas to this day. You feel me? 03 Greedo and them.
Yeah.
You feel me? They try to do some type of shit, but they seen that I wasn't on that shit. You feel me? Like they try to approach me on some cool shit, but I'm just knowing too much. I'm from the trenches too, so I'm just like not paying it. I'm not taking it lightly. You know what I'm saying? So I'm clutching and all that. Like I'm like, bro, what is y'all niggas trying to do? Like I'm going off of the energy. Fuck what you saying right now. I know what you saying, but it's like I'm getting it too. You feel me? Like I'm not slow. I'm not no fucking dickhead. It's like, what's going on, bro? Like what y'all trying to do? Like, and when they peeped it, they're like, oh no, this nigga ain't no fuck nigga. Like, you know, some shit like we really could fuck with this nigga, like on some real shit. And when they peeped it, like they started like getting a little bit more lackadaisical, and it's like, all right, we could talk, you feel me? And they try to test me like on some test me shit. Like,
Yeah.
they was just like, yeah, come to the hood, you feel me? Like, come
Oh,
to the
I'm not
hood.
coming to the hood.
I went to their hood. You feel me? With strapped up. You feel me? Like, I went with my niggas. Like, it was like 3 of us. And we wasn't crazy deep. Because I just be wanting niggas to know, like,
Nigga, that
I'm
could've
like
been a
y'all.
lineup.
I'm just like y'all, bro. You feel me? Like, I'm just like you. I came from the
Now,
trenches.
this is a 9-minute clip of DJ Academics interviewing PnB Rock. PnB Rock already got a little taste of what LA was like. Mm-hmm. He put himself in a dangerous situation, and it worked out for him on that particular day.
Right.
But then he did a live, as you said, and on that live, he had like 2 or 3 thick chains, and then his girl posted a picture. And then once you put those two together, whoever wanted to get him, he made it easy for them to get him.
Super easy, but that's the thing about it, man. You talk about a past situation, you know, where you had your pistol. What was your pistol this time? Because you always got to have it. You know what I mean? Now, let me give you a situation of he was at a bad spot. That's for one. In that spot, Alex, you know what I mean? You damn near have to be sitting at the table, pistol on your lap, shirt over your pistol, one in the chamber. You sit here and say you ain't a fuck nigga, you motherfucker, you peep game, you peep energy, you did this. You didn't peep the energy when this nigga came through the door. He didn't come in there and order no fries first and then motherfucking come over there to where you at. He came straight to you, bro. You know what I mean? That mean at this point, homie, when you saw what was moving, if you was on top of your game, you know what I mean, you would have had to grab your shit and defend yourself right at that moment. You know what I mean? That's what you being in LA, that's what you got to be on top of. Every time, homie, you got to be on everybody energy, everything moving, and you got to be ready to blast. You know what I mean? So to take yourself out of that situation, go to fucking Beverly Hills, you know what I mean, or go to certain Santa Monica, go to certain places where you may not, I ain't even saying you safe there, I'm saying you may not have to meet this kind of motherfucker force head on, you know.
And I thought we learned our lesson when Pop Smoke came to Los Angeles from Brooklyn, New York, and he was on Instagram, you know, flossing, and he didn't realize that the address of his mansion was showing on a box that he had just showed. And a whole bunch of hungry wolves on that day said, hey, let's pull up on Pop Smoke. Yeah. And I thought we learned our lesson. I think Pop Smoke was at least 3 years ago. And here we have another out of state rapper that gets killed almost in the same way. They saw his location, right?
No doubt. But I'm looking at the bigger picture. Now I'm looking at what's it finna be for, you know, our rappers out here when they touring the country. Is people going to start trying to blame them or get back? You know what I mean? I did hear this one cat. I had no idea who he was, but I got it in my phone where he was talking shit about, okay, we going to start, when y'all come to our town, we going to start tripping. You know what I mean? So I'm wondering, you know, if this eventually going to turn into something that, you know, some people want to take it back and forth as far as, you know, when y'all come to our town, we going to try to get y'all too. I'm wondering, is it going to turn into something like that?
Oh, man, it could, you know, I guess Los Angeles rappers got to be a little careful right now if they're in Philadelphia because they're mourning, you know, one of their icons right now.
No doubt. Philly niggas ain't no punk.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I can say that too. You know what I mean? You got some killers over there too. So, you know, just be careful, man, when y'all hit them corners out there, man. There's some people out there kind of upset right now.
But I think that most people will realize. Now, I went to a press conference on this week. And Najee Ali, a civil rights activist here in Los Angeles, said that we're not going to blame the victim. We're not going to shame the victim, even though they posted their location, even though they were flossing his chains, even though they did not take proper precautions, and even though, like you said, they could have saved their own life. And if we don't talk about this, then how does the next person learn? We got to use this as a learning example to say, hey, this is what not to do, not just in LA, but any city you visit.
No doubt. And that's one of my main things I do over there at FG Unleashed. You know what I mean? I don't got a bunch of jokes over there. I don't got a bunch of, you know, comedy skits and shit like that. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's just some facts, man, on certain things. And one of them you just pointed out, Alex, was like you said, man, is we got to use this and other situations as a learning tool for what not to do. You know what I mean? You know, tragic thing, dude lost his life. But at the same time, most of the degree, we are responsible for keeping ourselves alive. You know, when you standing on the corner and the bus coming down the street fast, you don't run across that street. You hold on the way till that bus go by before you jump out there in them streets. You know, you might try to run out there in front of a little Toyota Prius because, you know, you may feel you could run past that. So in your mind, you thinking that, hold on, I'm not gonna take that challenge. Same thing with this situation and choosing which restaurant to go to. You know, man, I'm not gonna put myself in that situation. Same thing when I'm out here, some of these motorcycle clubs. I had the A-Tray Hoovers come up on me at the DOs one time. Just thankfully, they say, hey, man, we like what you and Alex doing over there. You know what I mean? Just yesterday at work, you know, a guy came up to me, I'm at work, and he says, he say, man, anybody ever told you look like that guy on Streets and Scholars? I was like, look, I said Streets and who? And we both fell out laughing because he's like, oh man, it was nice to, hey man, me and my brother, we watch your show, you know what I mean? Shout out to Chris, man, you know, and just met him yesterday, you know, and they watching our show, man. But you have to be mindful, you know, as of myself, certain places I go to, you know what I mean? And that's all of us in life, you know. So some places I won't go to. I don't go to the motorcycle club over there in the main streets. You know what I mean? I don't go to the motorcycle club over. I just don't put myself in certain situations. Not that it might not be all good. I just don't even test it to see if it's all good. You know what I mean? So just like this guy right here, man, you choosing the right location to enjoy yourself in life right now. People's hungry out there. The big chains, the big this, you know, and I'm going to just be honest with you. When somebody come and they got the drop on you, get that shit up. You know, me personally, I've been fortunate enough that I've never been robbed before. But Alex, if I'm ever caught slipping and you got me, shit, man, you can have this, man. You want the car keys too?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because this shit is replaceable. I'm not going to even give you, if I'm going to tell you, man, you can put your pistol back in your pocket, man. You got this. You know, you got this.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know if he even stuttered one word or even said what? Like, you know what I mean? You know. When that dude pull out that pistol and you still sitting down, you might as well just start peeling that shit off. You got, you know. So don't lose your life over no funky ass jury. You know what I mean? A car or nothing of the sort. You know what I mean?
Now, I guess the police are reporting that there was a verbal argument between both of them.
Right.
Which suggests that maybe he was trying to resist the robbery.
That's how I took it.
Yeah.
Me personally, I don't know if that's really how it happened. I took it as resistance because I know robbers. Say one motherfucking word, homie, they gonna put one in your chest and then gonna tell you to peel it off. Cause guess what? After he shot the dude, he still went and took some of the jury.
Yeah.
So bro, you got your shit took still, and you lost your life. You could have just had your shit took. You know what I mean? Got on these YouTube streets and just say, hey, man, they got me. I got caught slipping. I'm not gonna look at you for getting caught slipping. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm gonna be like, what the hell you doing over there? You know, but you got your life, homie. You can go in and go make millions or more dollars for you and your family and your kids. You know what I mean? You know, and that's how it is.
Yeah, I was at the press conference and the spokesperson for Roscoe's called the shooter a monster. He said, we got to get this monster off the street. But I don't, in my opinion, I don't believe the robber went in there with the intention to kill. And I do, if there was a verbal back and forth between PnB Rock and the robber, then PnB Rock was irresponsible for trying to fight off a dude that's got a gun pointed at him. And the police always tell us, when a gun is pointed at you, cooperate.
Right. No doubt. And it sound harsh on our end. You know what I mean? Because it's funny because we haven't even talked about that part. I didn't feel like he was going in there to do a murder. I felt like he was going in there to do a simple robbery. And it could have been a simple robbery. You know what I mean? If dude would have just gave up his shit. On the flip side, bro, you killed a motherfucker over some jury. You know what I mean? If you're ever caught, you're going to be sitting in prison like, damn, I'm in prison for $20,000-$50,000 worth of jury. Because even though it could have been worth $100, you're not going to get that when you try to go fence it. You know what I mean? So that's the flip side of it. You know, for the dudes that are going out here putting these licks down, simple robbery can turn into a whole murder robbery just that fast. He probably just went in there, quick lick, hit this dude real fast, get on up out of here. Hey, man, you know, you call the police on a robbery, they took $100,000 worth of jury, even the police going to be in their minds, what the fuck he was doing here with $100,000 worth of jury?
Yeah.
Write the report, give you your report, and go on about your way. Say they gonna go look for the suspect and don't, because it's a robbery. No one was hurt and harmed. You know what I mean? You probably got insurance on the fucking. If you got that kind of jury, you should have some insurance on it. It's just a lose-lose all the way around, Alex.
Yeah, Manchester and Maine is no place to be walking around with a Rolex and $100,000 worth of jewelry. Tell the people where they can find you, FG.
Man, you can find me over there at FG Unleashed on YouTube, man. You can find me at FGeneral1 on Instagram. Y'all tap in with me.
And you just posted a video on this topic, man. We can go a whole nother hour on this because there's so many lessons to learn. Maybe we'll revisit this next week. Alex Alonso 101 on all social media platforms. I just posted the press conference to this shooting, to the PnB Rock shooting. Go tap in at Street TV to check out that video. And thanks for listening to another fire episode of Streets and Scholars.